Good morning, everyone. Welcome back. We got another episode of the Fantasy Fellow Show for you today. Happy February. It is February 1st. We have the Super Bowl approaching next weekend, and we are kind of just full bore off season mentality here. So we're going to be looking at my Dynasty rankings, my update. I update them on the first of every month, and we'll have an update in March. Now, I don't have the rookies ranked yet. For me, February is always the month where I'm doing my research, film, data studies, and things like that. So I'm going to probably have my first set of rookie rankings out in March. But we have, just everybody else ranked for dynasty purposes for February here. And I have a couple other things that we can talk about. But I'm going to hop into a screen share here. If you guys are a member of the fantasyfellowship.com, you guys can find these rankings there. I don't have any free rankings out, but on the members tab, just hit Dynasty Rankings and you're good to go. I do have quarterback rankings and Superflex rankings, but I kind of wanted to just share the top, 12 or so for each position. And then if you guys want to check out more, you guys can check out more. But anyways, we'll start with the quarterbacks here. I tiered these guys a little bit. The first tier, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, and Jaden Daniels has entered tier 1 for me. I don't think Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson, I don't think we need to talk much about those guys. They're playing at the top of their games. They're both the MVP candidates this year. So much rushing upside with both these guys, and then they just threw the hell out of the ball. Lamar definitely threw the hell out of the ball this year. I'd be open to taking either one of these guys. I didn't have the age in there, which I don't know why. So I always, when I do my dynasty rankings, I download a CSV file from Fantasy Pros, and for some reason they didn't have the age in there. So from there, I update my rankings and do stuff like that. But didn't have the age in there. But we have the tiers, and I think Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, you can't go wrong with either one of those guys. If you wanted to take Jaden Daniels over one of those two guys, I don't think that's crazy. I think he does belong in the same conversation with them. And hopefully the Commanders, put together a nice, offseason with free agents additions and a draft class here. And hopefully they can get more out of the skill player group around him. I think they can upgrade at wide receiver 2 and 3. Hopefully we'll see some tight end development there. If Zach Ertz returns, that's great. But Ben Sinnott, we'll see if he can step into a bigger role year 2. And then the running backs, they have Austin Eckler, they have Brian Robinson. I like Chris Rodriguez too, but if they added a weapon in the running back room, I think that would help the offense as a whole as well. So Jaden Daniels, well worth the top 3 pick. And then the tier 2 here is Joe Burrow, Patrick Mahomes, Jalen Hurts. This is probably one of the safest tiers to grab. Whether it's Joe Burrow or Mahomes, I think they're 2 of the safest players that you can grab right now. They have a ton of upside for years to come. And I think skill-wise, these are the 2 best passers in the NFL. You can maybe argue for a couple other guys here, but I think passing-wise, Burrow and Mahomes, they have the best of that category. They don't offer as much rushing upside. Hopefully Joe Burrow can stay healthy and keep running the ball. It looked like he finally was able to enjoy a healthy season, and that's why we saw the numbers bounce the way they did. And then with Mahomes too, like we're not going to bet against Mahomes. I think Burrow and Mahomes would be the safest players to grab for your quarterback dynasty rankings for the next 5 to 6 years. And when I'm doing dynasty rankings, I only look like 2 or 3 years out. I try not to get too far out, thinking 4 to 10 years down the road, because a player is only good to go for his contract. So I try to keep a 2 to 3 year window on these guys here, because who knows, in 2 years, maybe Josh Allen's a lot lower. But for now, for the next 2 to 3 year outlook, I think he's fine. And then Jalen Hurts at number 2, he's probably the worst passer on this list here, but that rushing upside's so crazy right now, and the way they're running the ball with Saquon Barkley, they have great weapons. I think Jalen Hurts is fine where I have him at. I do want to see him continue to develop as a passer, but I think for now he kind of just is what he is. He's going to be a rushing quarterback that throws for not a lot of yards and touchdowns, so that's fine. Tier 3, Herbert, Jordan Love, and CJ Stroud. Herbert was awesome down the stretch, and considering he had probably one of the worst skill groups, and they got so much out of that group going into the season with Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins as your starting running backs. Your receivers were an unproven Ladd McConkey, Quentin Johnston, Joshua Palmer, just a lot of junk at receiver, and hopefully they address that position again. I think Quentin Johnston, he did what he was supposed to do in year 2. Like, he had a horrible year 1. he comes back and he improved in a lot of things year two. So maybe there's another step forward for him, but I think he's more of like a number two, number three receiver, probably a number three. So I'm looking for the Chargers to add another player, maybe add a tight end, and then hopefully get a running back too. So Herbert here, you talk about the safety of Joe Burrow and Pat Mahomes. Like Herbert is super safe. Like he's young, he's very mobile, and he's one of the best passers in the NFL. So I look for a team that's going to add some weapons in the free agent pool, maybe draft a couple guys. I think there's a lot of room for to be excited with Justin Herbert and the Chargers. Now, Jordan Love at 3. Jordan Love and CJ Stroud both regressed in their second year starting, but they still have a tremendous tool set. And with Love, I think the biggest thing that hurt him this year, obviously it was the knee injury early in the season, and he didn't really have the rushing upside that he had when he was in 2023 with his first year starting. So he didn't run the ball as much. And a lot of his touchdowns went to Josh Jacobs. So they were throwing the ball a ton. They didn't really have an effective run game in 2023. So when they got to the red zone, Love was running, Love was throwing touchdowns, but he still had a fine fantasy season. He was more of a QB2 for most of the second half of the year, but I think there's still a ton of upside there. And I do expect the Packers to, they got to look at their receiver core. As a Packer fan, we don't have a number one receiver, and I think that hurt the team. Especially on third downs, we didn't have a go-to guy. Jaden Reed's good, but he's not. He's not a tier one receiver that can go out and win man-to-man every route. So I look for the Packers again, another team that's going to upgrade, hopefully at the skill group. And then CJ Stroud, man, they brought in Diggs, and we thought that would be a really big boost for him. A lot of people had him as a top 5 dynasty QB entering the season, but he really struggled. He was one of the worst quarterbacks on this list in 2024, and he ran the ball more, which I think was good for his bottom line numbers. But missing Nico Collins for a chunk of the year, losing Tank Dell, and then Stephon Diggs. There's just a lot of things that happened to him. They missed Joe Mixon for a handful of games. Not really a tight end to throw the ball to. I think the Texans have a lot of work to do. They also have room to improve their skill position group and try and figure things out. But CJ Stroud's still one of the best skill sets. And I think it's a possible buy low opportunity for CJ Stroud. He could be, if he goes out and throws 35 touchdowns next year, I'm not going to be surprised. There's a lot to like there, but he did regress a little bit. So maybe a buy low on Love and CJ Stroud here. And then we got the run of rookies here. Drake May, Caleb Williams, and Bo Nix. Now, you'll notice I don't have guys like Kyler Murray or Trevor Lawrence up here. I do think I put them, let me just tease you a little bit here. I did put them in the same tier, so I'll keep the tier up. Tier 4 for me is Drake May, Caleb Williams, Bo Nix, Trevor Lawrence, and Kyler Murray. Now, I have the rookies ahead because, they still have, 3-4 years of playing compared to Lawrence and Kyler Murray. But with Drake May, man, absolutely nobody on offense to build around as far as skill position, and he played really, really well. He was a low end QB1 for the back half of the 2024 season. So I think as far as all the rookie quarterbacks, he impressed me the most because he did the most with the least. And Caleb Williams, I go back and I watch some things on him, and he's making really awesome plays. But it's just a lot to overcome with Chicago. They had a lot of bad offensive line play. Going through a firing of the offensive coach and new offensive coordinators. So he's going to have to learn a new system. Ben Johnson, we'll see what he can do. I'm excited about it, though. I think there's enough there with Caleb Williams for him to warrant being a top 12 QB1 for Dynasty. And then Bo Nix, man, like he completely surprised everybody. I think he was my QB5 heading into this season. But for him to go out and run the ball that he did the way he did, and honestly, he didn't really have a lot of weapons either. Throwing to Cortland Sutton and guys like Marvin Mims and Devon Vele and Troy Franklin never really hit. But there's a lot of room for weapon growth, I think, with Denver. So I like all 3 of those rookies. And then Trevor Lawrence and Kyler Murray. These guys are established veterans. I think I'm excited about. There was a while there, week 5, 6, 7, Trevor Lawrence was really hitting his stride and starting to unlock Brian Thomas Jr. And I think the Jags know that they need to address that offensive side of the ball and get more playmakers and hopefully surround Trevor with some guys that will stick around for a while. And then Kyler Murray continues to be a good rushing quarterback. He's got awesome weapons, Marvin Harrison Jr., Trey McBride, but they also need to add some secondary weapons. So that's the quarterback rankings for now. We'll look at the running backs real quick here. And the running backs, man, the running backs are back, guys. Like this is one of the meatiest positions in fantasy football again, starting with Bijan Robinson, Jameer Gibbs, and Saquon Barkley, all in my tier one. If I'm drafting one guy, I still love Bijan Robinson the most, but Jameer Gibbs, man, his 2 to 3 year outlook might be better than Bijan Robinson's. I do like Bijan Robinson's. He's got to grow with Michael Penix Jr. and continue to get chemistry there. But with Jameer Gibbs, man, if David Montgomery is out, maybe he plays with them one more year, but 2026, maybe Jameer Gibbs is there's going to be some point where the whole backfield is Jameer Gibbs, and that could be in the next 2 to 3 seasons. So I could argue he could be number one on this list. We've seen it when he gets the opportunity to be the guy. He is one of the best players in fantasy football. So I can go either way with that. And then I do have Barkley a clear below those guys just because of the age. He's maybe only got one or two, top 5 seasons left before Father Time gets him. So I love that tier one group. And then tier two, we have some young guys, Brees Hall and Devon Achane. Struggling teams, questions on the Jets' future at quarterback. Hopefully they can figure something out. I think for the 1 to 3 year outlook, I love Brees Hall. He's a very good running back, but for them to figure out the quarterback position, I think is going to be a big deal. We did see Brees Hall light up the fantasy scoreboard 2 years ago, though, with a bunch of different quarterbacks. So I think he's a guy that can overcome bad QB play. But I think you have to bake in another season, maybe of Aaron Rodgers, and then 1 or 2 years with a rookie quarterback or someone that might be unproven. So we have to figure that out. But I still think you're getting Brees Hall at a discount right now if you want to try and buy low. That's fine. And then Devon Achane, man, he's one of the best receiving backs in the league. I don't think he's going to ever, get a big workload rushing the ball. But we saw, especially early in the year, they were just going to give him a ton of touches. So I think his 2 to 3 year outlook is very exciting. He's going to get a ton of touches, and the way they schemed him in the passing game, he's one of the best receiving backs in the league. And then tier three, we have some veterans here: Jonathan Taylor, Kieran Williams, James Cook, and Josh Jacobs. These guys are just volume plays at this point. James Cook ran hot on touchdowns this year. I don't know that's going to regress in 2025, but he's still a guy that's going to get 12 to 15 touches with Josh Allen as his quarterback. So he's a guy that I want. More of a low end RB1. And then I might actually take Josh Jacobs because I think I would assume the Packers are, they're going to play with Jacobs in 2025. He's under contract in 2026. That could get restructured or figured out. But he really took off in Green Bay as the season went on. And I could argue that I might take him over Kieran, over James Cook. He's a very good player, and he's the kind of running back that Matt LaFleur can feed touches to. And we haven't really seen that from Matt LaFleur, just giving one guy all the workload. And Josh Jacobs was fantastic. And then tier four, Bucky. I guess I kind of skipped over Jonathan Taylor and Kieran Williams. Jonathan Taylor, man, questions with Anthony Richardson. Can he be the starting guy? We don't know. Maybe the Colts draft another quarterback this year. But Jonathan Taylor continues to be one of the best runners. Like, he's the new Nick Chubb at this point. He's one of the best pure runners in football. Does not have the receiving workload that is required to be a tier 1 or 2 running back. And then Kyren, man, Blake Corum is drafted there. They really didn't give a crap about Corum at all season long. So Sean McVay just gives his RB1 all the touches. And I think for the next 1 to 2 years, you continue to take that with Kyren. Tier four, some young guys here: Bucky Irving, Chase Brown, and then Kenneth Walker, who really blossomed, I think, this year as an every down back. But you still have Charbonnet there, who played really well in relief. And Walker he tends to just get hurt with his playing style. He's an aggressive guy, but he really showed off his receiving skill set in 2024. And I think that's something that can continue to grow and continue to make him a low end RB1 for fantasy. But Bucky and Chase Brown, these guys take a little bit of projection here because we've only seen it for 1 year. But Bucky Irving was one of the best running backs in all the advanced metrics that I looked at. And when my advanced metric data study comes out, you guys will find he was the #1 running back when I looked at that stuff. And then Chase Brown also heavy volume there. He's going to get a ton of passes from Joe Burrow, and he's also a pretty good running back too. So he's got the job for the next, I guess this is entering his 3rd year. He's got 2 more years until they figure out if they're going to sign him or not. I like Chase Brown a lot. I love Bucky Irving. He's got a 3-year runway to be the RB1. I think Rachaad White is just now a 3rd down back, and I kind of want to see more Sean Tucker over Rachaad White anyways. But I love these 2 guys. I think if you can buy Bucky and Chase Brown right now, I think I would go for that and see what the price is on those 2 guys. Running backs are done. Let's look at the wide receiver position. My favorite position in all of fantasy football, especially for dynasty, because these guys have the longest shelf life. You can maybe argue quarterbacks, but I think for being elite fantasy playmakers, receivers, man, you got Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, and CeeDee Lamb all in my tier one, all established number ones. Jamar Chase, best year of his career last year. He's going to get paid hopefully soon. And then Justin Jefferson, man, I had doubts about him looking good with Sam Darnold, but that was proven wrong. And then, we have the huge question: is who's going to be their quarterback in 2025? Is it going to be JJ McCarthy? They bring in Sam Darnold back. I think for now, you take Jamar Chase with Joe Burrow. It's close though. If you have a preference, you can go with JJ, but I'm going to take Chase. And then CeeDee Lamb continues to be one of the best players. I think honestly, these guys are all interchangeable if you have preferences on them. But for me, I'm going to go with Chase because of Burrow. I think Justin Jefferson's still the most skilled receiver in football. And then CeeDee Lamb, man, he very, very good player. There's no knocks on any of these guys. Take them in any order you want, but that's how I'm going to rank them. And then tier two, man, we have some exciting players: Malik Neighbors, Amon Ra, Puka Nakua. When I was doing my advanced data study, Puka Nakua was flashing in pretty much all the advanced metrics, and I think there's a case for him to actually be up there, probably over Amon Ra, maybe even over Malik Neighbors. He's still a young player. Just the questions on how long is Matt Stafford going to stick around, because I think a lot of his value is tied to Stafford, and the 1 to 3 year outlook is cloudy for the Rams quarterback position. So that's why I have him ranked a little bit lower here. But with Malik Neighbors, man, he proved that it doesn't matter who the quarterback is. He's still one of the best receivers in football. And they're going to bring in somebody new, whether they get Sam Darnold or draft a quarterback this year. There's going to be someone there for stability for Malik Neighbors, hopefully an upgrade over what he had to catch the ball from this year. Malik Neighbors, dynamite. And then Amon Ra, I don't really need to tell you much on Amon Ra. He's just going to continue to get 100 plus receptions and 1,200 yards. One of the safest receivers I think you could take. And just the way he plays, doesn't get hurt, takes care of himself, smart guy. I like Amon Ra. And then tier three, man, we have a fun group here: Brian Thomas Jr., Nico Collins, Drake London, and AJ Brown. Brian Thomas Jr., if I'm doing these rankings next February and I have BTJ in tier one, I'm not going to be surprised. It took a little bit for them to get him going. Christian Kirk got hurt. The offense had to find somewhere to get targets, and Brian Thomas Jr. really started to click with Trevor Lawrence. And then Lawrence gets hurt, and then Thomas struggled a little bit as Mac Jones was getting his feet underneath him. But they really hit it off. And Brian Thomas Jr. was one of the best receivers down the stretch, up there with Jamar Chase in terms of fantasy points per game. Brian Thomas Jr., man, if you want to make him one of your first picks in a dynasty startup draft, I think that's well warranted. He's probably going to be moving up in these rankings here. And honestly, I might take him over Puka. I might take him over Amon Ra. I think Liam Cohen, there's a quote from him the other day saying that we got to get Brian Thomas Jr. 10 targets a game. Give Brian Thomas Jr. 170 targets in a season, and he could be the wide receiver one in fantasy. So buy Brian Thomas Jr., pay up for him. And then Nico, he got hurt this year. He was playing as one of the most elite receivers in fantasy football. You could get him on a little bit of a discount right now. And then Drake London looked good with Michael Penix. I think there's going to be a lot of growth. Penix looked good in some of the advanced metrics that I was studying. And I think Drake London, man, we just got to get used to him being a top 10 fantasy receiver for the next few years. And then AJ Brown, still one of the most elite receivers. He's just getting up there in age. So to me, he's a guy that I think is behind some of the younger guys ahead of him. And then let me tease a little bit. We'll look at the whole tier number 4 because I think there's some juice in here. All right. So we got Ladd, JSN, Wilson, Marvin Harrison, T. Higgins, and Rashee Rice. T. Higgins, we just don't know where he's going to play. Depending on where he goes, I might move him up or down. He's in the prime of his career. But for just uncertainty reasons right now, if he goes to a team that I'm not super excited about, that could change things. But man, if he goes to New England with Drake May, I'll probably move him ahead of AJ Brown and get him up there and maybe end of tier 3. But yeah, Ladd McConkey is going to be Justin Herbert's go-to guy for the next handful of seasons. Jackson Smith-Njigba is going to be the number 1 receiver for Seattle for the next few seasons. Garrett Wilson, same thing, number 1 receiver for the Jets. And Wilson's the kind of guy that can overcome bad QB play. We saw that, he played well in 2023, 2024, he looked good. And then Devontae Adams comes to town and kind of ruins his value. But we'll see. Marvin Harrison Jr., man, we have a lot to figure out with him yet. he's kind of a T. Higgins type player where he's kind of predominantly outside, big touchdown guy. Um, so that's why I have him ranked kind of right there. He's a younger version of T. Higgins to me right now, and he needs to evolve his game, or the Cardinals need to evolve as an offense and get him easier throws, more slants, more things to do to get him the ball in his hands quicker and not have to beat outside man coverage all the time. And then Rashi Rice, the little bit of a suspension baked in here. He's going to miss a good chunk of 2025. And then just the development of Xavier Worthy. If they bring in any other guys here, I don't know what Rashi Rice's ceiling is now that Xavier Worthy's kind of established as a really good receiver go-to guy. So that's my receiver rankings. Let's go ahead and finish up with the tight end rankings. Tight end rankings, it's Brock Bowers and Trey McBride. I almost put Brock Bowers in a tier up by himself. Uh, Dude overcame playing with Gardner Minshew, Aiden O'Connell, and I don't know, maybe one other quarterback here. He is going to be the number one tight end for a very long time. He is the number one receiver for the Raiders going forward. He's going to be the face of that Raiders team. Hopefully, they can get a quarterback in there that can help just put some stability for him. But yeah, I can't say enough about Brock Bowers. He is the tight end one. Trey McBride, tight end two. I love Trey McBride. Ran pretty bad on touchdowns in 2024, but they're going to find ways to get him, closer to 8 to 10 touchdowns in 2025. And I think those two guys, that's who you want. If you are playing Dynasty Fantasy Football, you want one of those two guys. And the consolation prize is Sam Laporta. It took him a while to get going in 2024, but he really finished strong down the stretch. Good young player entering his third season. That's usually when you see some of the best tight ends start to make their mark. And Laporta, I mean, if you can get him on a discount, go ahead and do so. And then TJ Hawkinson, he was returning from that bad knee injury. Tight ends can play into their 30s. So, like, Hawkinson still has a really good 3-year window. And a young quarterback like JJ McCarthy could really look at his tight end as a security blanket. He didn't catch a touchdown last year, if I recall. But again, the knee injury, the fact that he was out there and he didn't, have any setbacks or anything, I think Hawkinson entering 2025, very excited, worth buying low on TJ Hawkinson. And then tier three, we got some old guys and some solid guys here. George Kittle, Mark Andrews. Kittle's getting up there in age, but he had probably one of the best seasons of his career last year. He was the number one receiver for the San Francisco 49ers. He's tied to Brock Purdy. Kittle's, he's like the Joe Burrow, Patrick Mahomes tier for the quarterbacks, just safe and steady. I know he's really good in everything that he does, blocking. He might be the best tight end, all around tight end in football. And then Mark Andrews, man, I think there's some questions on if he's going to be a Raven anymore, and we'll see where he goes. But Mark Andrews, again, he had an injury in 2023, and it took him a little while to get heated up. But down the stretch, man, he was catching touchdowns, and he was a big deal for the Ravens. And then I put him in the same tier as Tucker Kraft and David Njoku, just younger guys. But I think these guys could be just as valuable in the next few years as Kittle and Andrews have been. Tucker Kraft, fantastic tight end. He's kind of a baby George Kittle to me because he's a really good blocker. They do that tush push with Tucker Kraft. Very smart player. I think him and Jordan Love, that's going to be his guy for the next few years. 60 to 70 catches for Tucker Kraft the next few years makes sense to me. And then David Njoku, man, he's probably one of the most athletic tight ends in football, and we just got to figure out who their quarterback's going to be. So we'll see there. And then tier four, we got some guys here: Evan Ingram, Jonnu Smith, Dalton Kincaid, Jake Ferguson. Notice I do not have Travis Kelce on here because I don't think he's playing football in year 2 and 3 in my outlooks for years 1 to 3. So I have one more year of Kelce usage baked in. He's a tight end 2 for me in Dynasty rankings. But Ingram, if he returns to Jacksonville, he's going to be good. Jonnu Smith, though, is the guy that really screamed up rankings. He was kind of the go-to receiver for Tua Tagovailoa, and I think just now that he did what he did, almost 90 catches, I think, in 2024. He's going to be a guy that continues to be a part of that Miami Dolphins offense. And honestly, I might move Jonnu Smith ahead of Evan Ingram here because I think that makes sense. And then Kincaid, man, getting nervous that it's just not there for him. You got Dawson Knox there who takes a lot of blocking and snaps away from Kincaid. Kincaid just really hasn't separated himself and proven to be that number one receiving option that guy like Kittle or Andrews or Hawkinson have been. So I'm getting nervous. Year 3, though, we're going to give him one more try. But I think we might just be kind of done with Dalton Kincaid if he doesn't put it together. And then Ferguson's still there. Not a great tight end, but I think he's fine for a low end tight end 1 option. Dak Prescott just needs to stay healthy. So there you have it, my quarterback, running back, receiver, and tight end rankings. And then I'll just show you guys a sneak peek. These are the Superflex rankings here. And you'll notice I don't have a ton of quarterbacks in Superflex because I tend to think that for me, and this is how I've won championships in Superflex, I always have at least one stud. There's one league where I have Mahomes and Dak Prescott. I mean, Prescott's no stud, but I think you need one stud quarterback. And then, I've won a championship with Baker Mayfield. I won a championship with Trevor Lawrence before. Some of those middling guys here. So I don't have a ton of quarterbacks in my top 12 here, but Allen, Lamar, Jaden Daniels, Joe Burrow. I put Joe Burrow ahead of Mahomes here. So I broke my tier for the receivers, Chase, JJ, and CeeDee Lamb. And then with Mahomes here, Jalen Hurts, and then the running backs at the end of round one, because those guys have a lot of power right now. So those are the Superflex rankings. And then the one QB rankings, you're not going to see a QB in the top 12, but you'll notice the receivers to start, Bijan, Jahmyr Gibbs, Saquon, and then we go with some youth at receiver, Malik, Amon-Ra, Puka, youth at running back, Brees and Devon Achane, and then Brian Thomas Jr., the 112 in a startup draft. So there you have it, guys. My Dynasty ranking update for February. You guys can check it out on thefantasyfellowship.com. If you want to look at this stuff, it's $8 a month to get a membership. Otherwise, I do offer a 2-week trial period for $5. You guys can try that if you just want to take a look around. I do have a lot coming out in February. I'm going to be hopefully sewing up this advanced data study. I look at the 2024 season and I put a bunch of numbers together and let you guys know who was playing the best at the quarterback, running back, receiver, and tight end position. So that's going to be coming out soon. And then as far as video content, I'm going to be putting out 2024 reviews for each division. So I think I'm starting with the AFC South. I think the first one might come out tomorrow. So I have 8 videos just reviewing each team, saying what went well, what went wrong, and what they might do in the offseason to address their issues. So stay tuned for that. Check out thefantasyfellowship.com. Like the video, subscribe, comment, just say hi. Thank you for watching. You guys enjoy the rest of your weekend. Peace. Got me feeling icy.